course. There was a yoga in the Wall Street Journal the other day that only takes 2 ounces of water every day, washes his mouth out and spits it out. Well, the medical establishment couldn't understand that. It's hard to understand that when you breathe, you're breathing in chemistry. You know, carbon is carbohydrates, which is essential to mix with oxygen. Hydrogen is your fats, and nitrogen is your proteins, or better put, amino acids. So you are getting these chemical structures, but at a much more refined level. But as you work at a much more refined level, you will find you won't need to eat near as much as you used to. I don't eat hardly anything to stay this size because I have bounds of energy, because I don't get my energy from foods. I get my energy from the Supreme Being in myself. But I had to learn that. And these higher level diets teach you that. So I went to oranges. I found an organic orange grove for the old Southern Baptist man had been raising for years, and this guy was definitely a channel for God. These fruits were as sweet as honey, and for some reason this navel crop that year was bumper year-round. And navel oranges you never get, start maybe mid-November if you're lucky, and get to the mid of January, late January if you're lucky. He had navels all year round that year, and his navel oranges were this big and sweet and as nectar. I mean, you almost had ecstasy eating them. So I lived 6 months on oranges, you know, and gives you a real heightened sense of joy and peace. But it also creates a lot of out-of-body experiences. You know, there's a lot said with near-death experiences. The show I Survived is touching on this a lot more. And these people were having experience with the light. But let me tell you, you go past the light into different heavens. There are worlds upon worlds with all types of beautiful jeweled cities. I mean, anything you can imagine does exist. You can't imagine outside of God. And the beauty of these heavens can be experienced. You know, if you're here, if one starts to look and realize they're only on this rock spinning through space for a short period of time. You're only on this planet, you know, well, some of the real sick people now with these genetic weaknesses and all the acids in the bodies are not living as long, but, you know, you're not on the planet more than, say, 100 years, 120 years, which is nothing. And so you realize that this is just a touch-and-go planet. You're here for a short time and you take off. All life in creation is just experiences. So if you can leave your body, if you're just using this body while you're here, why can't you travel around in these other worlds while you still have a body? And of course you can. And I was sitting around a campfire one time in a state park in Florida, living in these parks. I was sitting around a campfire and chatting with the group, and this police detective, of all people, police detective said, well, you know, I travel out of the body all the time. And boy, he piqued my interest, and he told me about the Rosicrucians, and so I joined that group, and of course they teach you to astral travel or out of the body travel. There is a Monroe Institute. John Monroe wrote a lot of books on the astral world, which is the next heaven. And of course Jesus described it a lot. There's a lot in Christianity about these heavens. Jesus said, my Father's mansion, of course, has many rooms. Buddha was an avid traveler. Many yogas are out-of-body travelers. Shabda Yoga or the Radha Swami group gets all the way to the Satnam level. And so there's a lot of heavens to explore. And you don't have to believe me at all, but investigate. Never shut things off, you know. You limit your own worlds and your own experiences by your belief systems. And I highly recommend that you open yourself up and enjoy the bliss and ecstasy of creation. There's so much here, but at the same time, very finite. And so if you want to know who you really are, and you want to know who the Supreme Being is, you've got to go beyond creation. You've got to leave the finite worlds for the infinite worlds. And you are a part of that infinite world, but not physically, not emotionally, and of course not mentally. You know, an old wise master said to me one day, he said, you know, if you stop thinking and you stop talking, there's nothing you won't know. And I totally understood what he was talking about. So I practice being here now. Ram Dass wrote a book, a lot of books in the presence of the now. Jesus said, live like little children. Again, meaning live in the present moment. Stop thinking, stop desiring. You know, your desires bind you to the object of those desires, and pretty soon you find yourself as a brilliant soul, not free anymore. You know, I had a client that she had a 5-year-old little girl, and she just gave birth. And this little girl came up to her and said, when she got home, she said, "Mommy, could I speak to the baby by myself?" And the mother was telling me this, and she said, "Well, yeah, sure, honey." And she had her newborn in a little nursery, and she let her little 5-year-old into the nursery, and she was sitting at the door listening. And this little girl walked up to the baby and said, "Baby, could you tell me about God again? I'm about to forget." And that's the problem, my friends. We forget who we really are because we get lost in creation. You know, it's like a toy land. You open the doors to Toys R Us and look at all the toys. But when you get tired of playing, you set them down and go on. And so that's how it is here in creation. But when you dwell on these raw foods, don't let your ego get too far out of line. Give reverence and love and humility to all life. Always put your ego in the corner. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean anything. It's only you. And if you get that you too big, then it gets in the way of the love and your friends and things. And I see this a lot. Judgment. People judge me sometimes because I'm not all raw anymore. At least sometimes. There's times that I'm 80% raw and 20% cooked. There's times where I'm 100% raw and times I'm 100% fruit. But I've traveled the world. I had a clinic in Portugal, and I fight the IRS because they have been misapplying the tax laws. Ron Paul, if you get a set of cojones on you and tell the public the truth, you've been telling them, they're just not listening, but really get strong and tell them the truth as you know it. It's time that the Americans wake up to the fraud that this government has been pulling over on you. So I fight a lot of dishonesty, and of course the federal court system is a travesty. These federal judges are as corrupt as you can get, at least some of them. I've been in front of a lot of them, and every one I've been in front of have been pretty corrupt. And this has got to stop in this country. You know, sometimes we think we're the best of the best, but that's brainwashing. You know, love is the key here, and honesty and integrity. And in this country, we have to go back to the law. But irregardless, these things are very stressful, and of course hard to maintain a high level of diet, a raw diet, when you're fighting these kind of causes, because there's just so much corruption and evilness, if you will. When I came out of the woods, I opened up some health food stores. I thought, you know, that would be good to help people. I wanted to help people because I saw how fast the body could heal. At a high level of fruitarianism, I could cut myself. I wouldn't bleed. I wouldn't have any pain, and I wouldn't even know it was there. And next thing, it was healed in a day or two. And Arnold Ehret in his books talked about that high level of healing that the body can have at these high level of diets. And I didn't realize that until I started reading his book, and I said, oh my God, I just proved that. And I also proved that the lower you eat on the chain, and when you eat meat, you cut yourself, it hurts, it pusses. Meat's very putrefactive, toxic. And yet people love to eat on that dead animal stuff. So I opened up health food stores, and I wanted to help people. And at the time, I lost that kind of fruitarian thinking. I was so I had so much energy. I was teaching people how to have out-of-body travels and to travel into these worlds. And so the energy was, I could just feel spirit.